Thanks, Ducko. Now, moving on to foreign news, and Russian President Vladimir Putin has apologised to his Azerbaijani counterpart following the deadly crash of an Azerbaijan Airlines plane this week in Kazakhstan. A statement made by the Kremlin overnight claiming Russian air defence systems were firing in the area due to a Ukrainian drone strike, but stopped short of claiming any responsibility for downing the plane.
It follows a declaration from the White House of early indications that Russia is to blame for the crash, which left 38 people dead. Joining us live to discuss is Dr. Sam Greene from the Centre of European Policy Analysis. Sam, good morning to you. How significant is this apology? I mean, Putin apologising? I can't even recall.
Yeah.
It has been a rare occurrence indeed, but I think that, look, he probably didn't have much choice. I think that the evidence was pretty clear. We saw military bloggers and other observers and experts who were commenting on what they could see in the pictures coming out of Kazakhstan. We saw the Azeri authorities reporting that they thought this is what had happened. As you mentioned, we'd seen the Americans and others come in on this. And so early versions that we had seen out of Moscow that this might be a bird strike or some kind of a technical fault just really didn't hold a lot of water. So I think Putin, found that he was chasing the news here rather than being in his usual position of being able to set the narrative.
Will we ever really know what happened here? I remember MH17 and that plane being downed in 2014, and there was such a cloud of misinformation around that. I guess, where do they start with this investigation?
Well, I think Putin has said, and then the Russians have said there will be teams on the ground, both in Russia, where this anti-aircraft fire, if that's indeed what happened, came from, and in Kazakhstan, looking at the wreckage of the aircraft. Of course, miraculously, there are survivors who will also be able to give statements about what they experience. But again, I think there doesn't seem to be a lot of doubt here. The question is whether or not Russia is going to be able to pin the blame for this in some way on Ukraine. We've already seen the Kremlin say that it would have amounted to an act of terrorism, simply the fact that Ukrainian drones were operating in Russian civilian airspace, and thus requiring that Russia have its anti-aircraft services operational. I think that's a statement that the Ukrainians themselves and most Europeans and others around the world would find to be quite ironic, but it's the story that the Kremlin seems to be sticking to for the moment.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They certainly look like bullet holes on the fuselage and in the tail as well. So will there be any repercussions for Russia if they are found to be at fault for the crash?
Well, the question really is how can they manage their relationship with Azerbaijan and with Kazakhstan, countries they rely on tremendously for sanctions evasion. Particularly Azerbaijan is an important route for the illicit export of Russian hydrocarbons, oil and natural gas. It's also become an important security partner recently since the recent war between Azerbaijan and Armenia for Russia in the South Caucasus. And it's a partnership really that Putin will be loath to do without. So he may in fact have to come to Baku, to President Aliyev, with something of a mea culpa in order to smooth this over and really demonstrate to the Azeri people that he has some condolences, at least, for their loss.
Sam, this area has so many routes flying overhead, so many planes going overhead every single day. How can we make sure that this never happens again? Does it come down to changing airline routes?
Well, look, I mean, first of all, most Western airlines, most G20 airlines, so airlines of countries that have imposed sanctions on Russia, are no longer overflying Russia. Russia used to be an important way to get from Europe to the Pacific Rim, to the Far East. It's no longer the case. People are already flying around Russia, but we have seen, those countries that continue to fly to Russia, including some of Russia's allies like Turkmenistan, find that it's now too dangerous to fly over Russian airspace. Of course, when the war started in February 2022, Ukraine closed the entirety of its airspace out of an abundance of caution. And I think a lot of people will now be asking whether Russia needs to do the same, given that Ukraine has managed to turn large parts of southern and western Russia into an active war zone.
Thanks so much, Dr. Sam Greene. Appreciate your time.